Kia ora, everybody. This podcast has been wicked. I've spoken a lot about how in New Zealand most people have 2 degrees of separation with each other, and through talking to new people, expanding my network, slowly I'm getting 2 degrees of separation with many people. And so through Dino Gladstone's partner Katie, I've been introduced now to Sasha, all the way in Chicago. We always start off with, what did you do last weekend, Sasha? So go for it. What did you do last weekend?
Last weekend I taught in Cook County Jail, like I do every weekend. And I took my dog to the dog park 3 times.
Wow. What sort of dog have you got?
I have a German Shepherd, and she's all black, super fierce. Her name is Pipper Maxine, and she is my heart and joy.
Mm-hmm. So a few episodes back we had Brady Tatonka, who's an ex-military man, and he has an Australian kettle dog, a blue heeler, and he calls it a blue H-E-A-L-E-R because he's been through a lot of trauma. What does your dog mean to you, and where does it sort of catch you out on those moments of self-awareness?
What does she mean to me? Let's see. Well, she is my first dog and my first real pet, I guess. I only had a hamster before her. And she is like totally like a little human and a dog. She's got such a personality. She's very much a queen, doesn't like getting her paws wet when it rains, doesn't want to step in mud. If she sees like another dog's poop, she will do anything to go as far away from it as possible. So she's so funny, and she, every day when I go home, I look forward, to seeing my husband, I guess, yes, but mostly my dog, because she is just my little spoon, I guess. She's the greatest.
Great. And so the beauty of social media is we're able to connect, and the person that connected us, you guys basically met through, like, you thought it was LinkedIn or Instagram or something. And then tell us about the story of what brought you 2 together in person.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I love social media because you're open to meeting people halfway across the world, and it's a really incredible experience to be able to bond over something where even though you don't even know someone, you have something in common with them, and you're able to kind of talk about it and talk about what brought you, to that, which for Katie and I is yoga. And so Katie had reached out. I believe it was LinkedIn, but it might have been Instagram. And then she sent us an email and was like, hey, I love what you guys are doing. I follow you guys on Instagram, and I'm excited about your mission. I'm going to be in Chicago. Can I come see you or come to a class? And of course I told her, unfortunately, she could not come because of all the, stipulations about being in a jail. But that I'd love to meet with her and tell her, about our organization and get to know her. And so she came to my house, and I took her to my favorite restaurant in downtown Chicago. And we talked like we were old friends about yoga, about her life in Australia, about my dream to one day go to Australia. I don't follow, side note here, I don't follow food accounts generally. I'm not that type of person. And the only food account that I follow, which was before I even met Katie, is this restaurant in Australia that looks amazing. And so one day my goal is to go to Australia, hopefully see Katie again, and go to this incredible restaurant that just looks like they've got beautiful food. And so we talked about that and about Prison Yoga Chicago, and how she could be involved if she wanted to, and just kind of went on from there.
Beautiful. So I guess with yoga, there's a lot of ways to get into it. Myself, it's sort of, I don't know, end of uni, trying to find a way to relax and unwind in what was probably a massively stressful situation. I had an eye twitch for the last 6 months of uni because I was just under so much sympathetic override. And through a Krishna place in Auckland where I was studying, I met some yoga, and then dabbled in some hot flow, and when I moved to Christchurch, and then the gym that I joined offered a sort of a fusion of Pilates, yoga, and meditation class, which was really awesome.
Awesome.
I was
Wow.
dealing with like a hip issue. I was trying to sort of retrain and realign my body to try and avoid surgery or make my body last as long as I could without having surgery. And it was really helpful to open up both in terms of a body and muscles and unwind from the day to day, and then also be sort of quite restorative. Where did yoga enter your life? And you know, we have this debate, Alex, my partner, and I, whether or not, should go and do yoga teaching, and will that mean passion becomes a job, and do you lose the passion? What do you find around that? What took you in it, and how do you find that passion to job ratio sort of stuff going on?
Yeah. So, wow, that's a good question. So I actually turned to yoga when originally I hated yoga. When I was a kid, my mom did yoga every morning, and she would always be
Wow.
like, I'm getting up and I'm doing more yoga. And I was like, that's stupid. Like, it's not even a good workout. Why would you do that? And I never really got it. And then, similar to yourself, I guess, one of my friends took me to a yoga studio to try hot yoga.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, I could do this. And in general, I'm too flexible. I've dislocated my knees, 10 times combined and had 3 surgeries. And so I know that my body is, overly flexible than it should be. But with hot yoga, it was a mix of being flexible, but also being strong and being able to use your muscles to not overstretch. And I loved hot yoga. And when I took classes with her, I really started to see, this could be something that I do, that I teach, that I involve myself in, as much as I can. And I waited a few years. I, dabbled in it, didn't take class every day, but joined a couple of different studios, really understood what different flows I liked better. And then my husband at the time, boyfriend, we're moving from where we went to school back to near downtown Chicago. And we were moving because my sister, who is my best friend in the world, and I love her more than anyone else, her husband has been battling cancer for quite a while. And so I really wanted to be as close as I could get to my sister. So my sister lived in a little town called Oak Park, and it's about 15 minutes out of the city. And we also wanted to move to Oak Park so that we could finally live, down the street blocks from my sister. I could go over there all the time, spend as much time with her and her husband as I could. And our move-in date was June 12th. And this was, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And about 2 weeks before we moved in, her husband, my brother-in-law, who is also my second favorite person in the whole entire world after my sister, just the most incredible human being I've ever met. So 2 weeks before we actually moved into our new place, he went into hospice. And so this was just an incredibly, difficult experience, being that, we finally were going to live blocks away. And we never really got to live blocks away because the whole time we lived in Oak Park, he was in hospice, and it was really tough. And so that summer, actually, coincidentally, was the same summer that we got our perfect little dog, Pipper. And so we had this new apartment, this new puppy. We were both in brand new jobs. And it was a crazy summer of, getting up really early, going to work, leaving work, going to hospice, going home, going to sleep, and doing it all over again. And so probably about 3 months in, I had realized I had spent my whole summer in hospice with my sister, supporting my brother-in-law and being surrounded by family, and that I'd kind of forgotten to take care of myself. And it was just a big struggle of going between, my boyfriend at the time, our puppy, hospice, really not being able to juggle it all. And I think what I learned in that was just that I was kind of forgetting about my own mental health and my own health in general. And I remembered how much I loved my hot yoga classes with my friend. And it just so happened that there was a yoga training that summer, not too far from my house, about 30-minute drive. And so I decided that, well, and I guess backtracking a little bit, I apologize. When I moved to Oak Park, I did decide, I needed to be more involved, and I want to work out more. So I joined this yoga studio and I started cleaning for them for free. And I did that before we moved to Oak Park. So in exchange for free yoga, I would clean the studio. And it's a really awesome program that I love supporting. But then when I moved to Oak Park, my sister's husband was in hospice. So I ended up cleaning for free and never going to yoga. I probably went to one class because I just would clean for free on the weekends for 3 hours, go to hospice, stay in hospice for all day, go home, hang out with the dog. It was just, not focused on my own health. So I gave myself an ultimatum. So I think it was August or September whenever I started my training. And I gave myself an ultimatum and I was like, okay, I'm either going to stop cleaning and just forget about yoga altogether, or I'm going to pay $4,000, whatever it was, $3,000, and get my yoga certification and actually focus on me. And so I decided that for 3 days a week, I would go to yoga training and get my certification. And then I would make sure that I taught enough classes every week to pay it back in 4 months. Because I wasn't being paid that whole lot of money at that time in my life. And $4,000 is a lot of money. So I knew that I had to, if I was going to do this, I had to be really serious about it. So it was August. I, gave myself this ultimatum. I signed up for a teacher training, and then I started, I think it was a couple months later. And then my schedule was the same. So it was still like 3 days a week, go to work, get home, drive to hospice, go back home, do the whole thing all over again. And then the other 3 days a week, I would go to work, get home, drive to my teacher training, stay there for 4 hours, go home, the next day do hospice. So hospice, teacher training, hospice, teacher training. That was kind of my schedule for the next, I think it was 8 or 9 weeks. And that was probably the best thing I've ever done for myself, ever in the history of anything. Just being able to focus on me and split up that time. Not only did it help me build a better relationship with my husband at the time boyfriend, because I reminded myself that I had to still spend time with him and take time for myself and still spend time with family and not forget about all the important things in my life. And just being in teacher training, I think you learn a lot about the body and the mind, and you learn a lot about how the yoga postures are more than just postures. They're ways to help your body feel a different way. And so this was, just helped me have better mental health. It helped me come to my breath. During this time frame of my sister's husband being in hospice, I generally have very, very bad anxiety. But the knowing of the tough living situations that he was in and my sister, my anxiety had just completely skyrocketed. And at the time, I didn't know that it was my anxiety. I didn't really know what it was that was happening. So really like having yoga in my life at that time and being able to use yoga and use my yoga breath to help my anxiety was probably one of the best things that just helped my mental health and helped me learn how to control my anxiety and remind myself that I was in control. So really from there, I did that for 9 weeks. And then after that, I was teaching 6 yoga classes a week on top of a full-time job, on top of having a puppy and a boyfriend that I loved so much, and being in hospice as many hours as I could and spending all my time with my family. And I did that until I paid back all that I spent on yoga training. And then I did drop a couple classes because 6 classes a week was a little much. It was about 12 hours of yoga a week, and then obviously my normal 50-hour a week job.
Wow.
So it was crazy. I was living a crazy lifestyle for a while. And then between that, so for the first year, I guess you can say then, of being in Oak Park and being with my sister, was the hardest year I've ever had to endure in my life. And at the same time, always reminding myself that what I had to endure in that tough experience in my life was nothing, even a sliver of what my sister and her husband had to endure. He is still alive today, still with cancer. Unfortunately, it is terminal, but, holding on because he loves my sister and my sister loves him, and their love is just the most beautiful love story in the world. But that, I think, was really difficult. And within, I think, about a year and a half after that, he left hospice and he moved home. And then he was at home for a little bit, moved into a different rehabilitation center just to help get his health a little bit better, back on track. And now he's back home unfortunately on bed rest, which is, not the best of circumstances, but he's home, and that's really important. And so for me, yoga was all about getting my own life back on track and being able to remind myself to focus on me, even when somebody else is going through something so terrible, to not forget to focus on myself and my own family too.
Wow, that's a hell of a story.
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't told that story in a long time.
Yeah. So in our last episode, we had Josh Coleman, who he's survived cancer to today, and one of the things he sort of said was that the happy ending is the end of perseverance. And like you said there, that yoga training was the best thing you could have ever done. But often when we look back on things and are so amazed at ourselves, at what we've done, really, when we're in the moment, it's hard. And like you said, your anxiety was through the roof. How did you sort of, like I said, a little bit of gratitude of where you were at, for yourself and compared to other people? What were some of the, dark days like when you've got, like you said, so much on your plate? What did you sort of do, and how did you feel, and how did you move forward?
Yeah, I think the constant reminder that, we all have struggles in life, and they really suck. And my struggles are not different than someone else's struggles. And, pain and struggles can't really be measured. And always reminding myself that my struggles are difficult and they suck, but my sister's husband's struggles are nothing compared to mine. And not to compare them, because I know that that's, my struggles are still valid, and reminding myself of that. But just always that reminder that, if someone with terminal cancer that wasn't supposed to live past 22 is still every day fighting for his life, I can get up, go to yoga, go to my work, come home, do whatever else I need to do, because I guess he's kind of my motivation. And I mean, the reason why I ever even became a yoga teacher, and just that the strength that I see in him, where, I mean, even today, like being on breathing machines and not being able to eat, and, he plays music, and that's what he does. And when you watch his videos, which I generally struggle with just because it's hard and I love him so much, you can just see this guy singing that's fighting for his life, that can barely breathe, yet he's singing. And I think it's just such an amazing motivation, and that's kind of what gets me through the day.
I think you touched on a really important note there, and it's something that we often lack because we're our worst critics, and there's a little bit of humility about where we're at, and acknowledging that our feelings are worthwhile and our feelings are meaningful, and that it's okay, and we shouldn't compare our feelings to anybody else, and we should acknowledge them, and that allows us to deal with it. And many of us seem to bottle them up and bury them to the side, and at times they can explode. Moving forward with our conversation, is that sort of where the jump to helping these people out in a different type of hard situation, and be it or not that they might have put themselves in there through their life force, but is that one of the key things that helps, that they get to acknowledge their hard time and their feelings and how they feel, and almost sort of move forward? And that key word that we hope from the prison system actually creates some rehabilitation with these people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really, part of our core mission is, why we teach trauma-informed yoga, is to have that understanding that we've all experienced trauma, and trauma is a spectrum. There's trauma that a paper cut, right? That hurts. The second that you get a paper cut, that hurts, and it teaches you that you don't want that to happen again, right? It is similar in the way where when you go through a traumatic experience, you feel trauma, right? Not saying a paper cut is trauma, but the idea that we all experience trauma in a spectrum, that once you experience trauma, how that feels and how to avoid it, and to use tools to help you learn how to cope through your trauma. And that's really where trauma-informed yoga comes in. When we're in the jail, we always tell our students that, I've experienced trauma, you've experienced trauma, anyone's experienced trauma, but how do you cope with that trauma? It's your choice of what tools you're going to use, whether that be your breath, or whether that be yoga or yoga posture, or for some people, maybe running or working out or whatever that looks like, understanding that we all can cope with trauma in different ways. And that kind of comes to, not comparing yourself or not reminding yourself that people cope differently, and that what works for me and trauma that I've experienced might not work for you or might not work for my students, but being able to provide them with the understanding that, trauma is a spectrum, and that there are multiple tools for you to use wherever you lie on that spectrum, and that your breath or your posture or your yoga or whatever that looks like for you can help guide you through, so you can just learn coping mechanisms to help grow within the trauma that you experienced.
Continuing on the theme of humility, and I can't think of the organization of what it's called, but I've heard about it both on Tim Ferriss and Peter Attia's podcast, and they basically bring in business people into the prison system, and I think this is at high security prison systems, so people that are basically there for life, and they do an exercise which they call step to the line, and they get the people to sort of, how many people have committed a petty crime, and most people actually step forward, and then it's kind of like when we first arrested and really early on for these people, and all of a sudden that traumatic moment starts off, and they talk about parents around, and did you have books in your home and all those sorts of things. And Peter Attia really talks about it quite strongly. He nearly had a traumatic event as a child, and he said he was involved with some bad people through high school, and for his life he got something else that took him another way. He was a successful engineer, successful investor, now a successful doctor, but he's just so conscious of the fact that we all deal with trauma, and depending on our circumstances, things can go one way or another, and it must be such a powerful environment to be in and raise that level of humility that, gosh, we're all so lucky to be on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what's amazing is, every week when we go to class and, I chat with my students, I remind myself, and when we train our teachers, we train them and remind them that, they're people just like us, and they did something bad, but they just happen to get caught for it, where we've all done silly things that we shouldn't have, right? But we learn from it and we move forward. And they did something that they shouldn't have done. They got caught for it, and now they're serving their time. And when you talk with them in jail and you learn, about them, and they tell you about who they are, they're just like you and me, and they're great, gracious that we're providing our time to teach them something different. And hopefully they can take these tools when they do get out on the outside, and then the goal of our program is that then they won't get back into the system, because now they have this, toolbox of yoga breath and yoga postures and intention setting and breath work. And that's where we hope that they use that, so that then back up where they started.
And yeah, hearing people's stories, sometimes it can be quite harrowing about what they've always been through. Even some of my patients in the optometry practice, I sort of start to unravel where things are at, and you go, oh my God, so much has gone on in your life. So tell us about what it is to do trauma-based yoga. What separates that from everything else? Yeah,
so trauma-informed yoga is different than yoga in a regular studio, because it's being very mindful of the way you're speaking to the students, the cues that you're using, the intentions that you're bringing to class, how you're addressing students, and the formation in which really the class is being held. So one of the biggest differences is when we go into the jail, we remind all of our teachers that we kind of just said, we're all equals. We actually teach class when space is available in a circle. And this really helps us maintain the idea that in a place or an institution that has so much hierarchy, that has so much formality, that we're able to break that down and be equal to them. Like in a circle, there's no one part that's higher than another. We are just the same as them, shoulder to shoulder, doing class, staying in the four corners of our mat. And it's really helpful to remind them of that. We also always call the students by their first names. Generally, when new students come to class and we check them in, they give their last names and their number, because that's what they're used to in a jail. And for us, we say, you know, what's your first name? We shake their hand, we look them in the eye, and we never call them detainees. Language is really important in the criminal justice system because there's so much hierarchy, and there's so many different terms. In a jail, in America, at least in a jail, you're a detainee. And in America, you're innocent until proven guilty. So essentially, when you're in jail, you could be in jail for a petty crime for, let's just, and you're not an inmate, which means you still have your, you know, freedom in America. You can still vote. And it's important that we remind them of that they are still humans just like us, and, you know, looking at us as, you know, almost like not a friend type way, but, you know, a common acquaintance. And in a prison, on the opposite side, you're an inmate. So you have been, you know, sentenced. You are, you know, then officially serving your crime. And there are definitely times where, you know, the criminal justice system is broken, and somebody who might have done, you know, petty theft might go to jail for 2 years, but the maximum sentence before they're heard by a judge is 2 years. So if they serve all their time in a jail, they essentially, when they go to court, they have to plead guilty to get out. If they plead innocent, then there's a chance that the judge will find them guilty, and then they still have to serve another 2 years. And so this broken system, and us understanding that some of our students did, you know, very, very small crime, it dehumanizes them while they're in jail. And so for us to be able to, you know, continuously remind them and to humanize them like they're just like us, you know, whether we're teaching in a circle, calling them by their first names, you know, talking to them like we're equals, is a huge part of just being trauma informed and reminding that they're all dealing with this trauma every single day. Another different part is really the intention setting aspect. Almost any yoga class you go to, a teacher will either provide an intention or they'll offer you to have an intention while you're in your class. And this is a really important part of our class, where we provide a positive intention that more so speaks as a goal. And it helps guide the students really in a metaphoric way of what they should be doing their yoga for, you know, whether that is for gratitude or for a specific quote that we found that week. It really helps carry us through the rest of the class. And then one of the last ways that we're very different in our trauma-informed yoga is we do something called call and response. And this is where we use Sanskrit, which of course in yoga is an ancient Indo-European language. And this is often used to describe the different postures. And when you actually think about what Sanskrit does, the way the Sanskrit words form is supposed to tell your body really how to move. So call and response is us using Sanskrit in a very engaging way, where we'll say, you know, inhale, Urdhva Hastasana. And the students will then scream back at us, Urdhva Hastasana. So it's this constant back and forth motion with our words of Sanskrit, where for new students in class, especially when we're teaching the male population, you know, as females, there's a lot of giggling, or people who have never done yoga before and they don't know what they're doing. And so they're nervous. And so call and response helps us continuously engage them and keep them focused on our class. And then really, of course, when doing trauma-informed yoga, no matter what type of trauma-informed yoga you're doing, if you're in a jail, if you're not in a jail, or even if you're in your regular yoga class that you know, teach at a studio, trauma-informed is really focusing on how we're cueing. So avoiding any type of cues that might bring up any type of traumatic experiences. In a jail, a common one might be, you know, put your hands behind your back or spread your legs. Those are cues that can bring them back to when they were arrested, when they were brought to the jail. And so we want to avoid any type of cueing like that. Other type of trauma-informed postures are really thinking through how you're guiding the class in their postures. Happy baby, for instance, is something that I usually do at the end of all my classes when I teach in the studio. But in the jail, happy baby is a very vulnerable posture, especially really for both the male and the female population. You're laying on your back, your legs are wide open, and it almost can feel as a way of inviting someone into your space. So we always try to avoid any type of posture that is very vulnerable, and not wanting to put the students through any type of, you know, traumatic feelings that might come up when they're either hearing traumatic language or in a posture that doesn't resonate with them.
And so what sort of flow are you working through with that? You're sort of really holding a position and working all those little elements, or is it quite a fluid sort of go through the position type of yoga?
Yeah, so every class is completely different. We teach in 5 different divisions in Cook County Jail in Chicago. And the division that I mainly lead is an all-male division where it's our largest class. We have about 25 to 26 students, sometimes even upwards of 30. And when you have, me, a 5'3" small girl in a room of 25 to 30 students, often there's a lot of energy that we need to release. So it's generally a very, vicious vinyasa flow where we are flowing from our sun A to our sun B and getting in, of course, longer extended triangle series, and then usually ending in more of a mindful meditation.
With that, one thing that you always notice as somebody that's really sympathetic dominant is that shortness of breath. Especially if you're doing a quick flow, how do they go with the breathing? Because obviously that's a real great way to center yourself and expand that stomach and stretch your vagus nerve and calm things down. How do they sort of initially go with that breath? Yeah,
so our students they're incredible with their breath. When we say exhale, you can really hear the whole room exhaling. Right. We ensure that every posture, like in any other class in the studio, there's a breath attached to it. And we exaggerate our own breath to ensure that the students are doing the same.
And so what do they think when you start to say ujjayi, you breathe into your nose and get that reverberation? Is that where some of the giggles start?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's some times where, they're like, what is this Sanskrit word? Like, what are you guys making us do? But it's also really fun, and we have fun with it, and we, encourage that laughter, when needed. My favorite posture is Bhujangasana, which is technically cobra pose, but in PYC, we use it for upward dog because they don't have to go into a full expression. So we'll say, inhale Bhujangasana, and then you have 25 guys yelling Bhujangasana, and you can hear their breath because they love it. They scream it throughout the jail. We're in a cafeteria type room, and it is so loud that I always say, make the officers come in here being confused, because we want you guys to use your breath. And it's their only time where, they get to be loud and noisy without having anyone tell them to quiet down. So it's kind of, in a place where they're not free, they have an hour of freedom with yoga.
So what is the energy like? Is it high strung as they enter the room, or does the energy drop as they enter the room? And then obviously what's it like towards the end? Yeah. It must build and build and build.
So in the division I teach in Division 6, it's always high energy. They're always so excited to come to class. They're like, oh my God, I miss you, especially if I miss a couple of weeks where sometimes my life gets crazy and I have to have a sub. But yeah, they're always, very, very high energy. In Division 8, we teach in the women's division, and often prenatal. And that's very, very low energy, more so meditation classes, very quiet, down on the ground, a lot of more breathing exercises, meditating on your mat. So it kind of depends on the relationships that we build with our students and what type of class they're looking for.
Wonderful. So as you said, the prison system has, and the jail system as well, like you said, somebody can be there for 2 years and then have to go to court and plead guilty because they've served their sentence. And with that, obviously, there's a lot of red tape and boxes to tick and all that sort of stuff. How does one get a yoga class into a jail?
Yeah. So, for us, it's been building a really incredible relationship with the employees at Cook County Jail. The program director that we work with is incredible. We have constant communication with her. I chatted on the phone with her today, always just keeping her in the loop on how many teachers we have, the classes that we're in, what we're doing externally. We're always, having open communication just to ensure that they have trust in us and in the people that we're bringing in, and that we have trust in them, that our teachers are always going to be safe. So that's the number one thing, is really just sharing, you know, our vision and our goals and why we're there. And they kind of understand and see that and are excited to let us into their space.
Wonderful. And so how long have you guys been going for?
So we started in the jail in 2016. I have been a part of the organization for about 2 years and only president for 1 year. And every year we've had, you know, an incredible amount of growth. We're serving more of the population. We're increasing the number of classes, increasing the amount of teachers that we have, and hoping to continue to grow and expand into other institutions in Chicago.
Great. And so what sort of feedback mechanisms do you have? Obviously, there's the immediate feedback of the people in the class, and like I said, you're constantly talking with the staff. How do things sort of pan out down the track now being, what are we, 3 years old?
Yeah. So we're very, very, you know, data focused. In my actual, you know, full-time job, I'm a marketing manager, and I have to be completely, you know, data focused to ensure that the campaigns that I'm running are actually, you know, moving the needle in the industry that I work in. And it's the same way with PYC. We keep data of every student that's ever been in our classes, how often they come to class, how long they were in our program for, how consistent they were in coming to class. And the whole goal is really to show that if they come to class consistently, and if they take yoga and they learn from the tools that we teach them, that when they do get out of jail or whenever they move into a new institution, that they won't come back into jail later in life. And being able to show that, and show that we have students that they tell us that they feel different, that they feel more relaxed, that they're able to control their breath and their feelings. That's really where we're able to communicate that back to the jail and show that, you know, we're making change. And obviously it's very incremental, but it's important. And that 20 years down the line, we hope that by continuing to work with organizations in Chicago, and then hopefully, you know, elsewhere as well, that you'll see a more internally focused population that doesn't find themselves in jail time and time again.
And I guess one great thing is that you guys are having increasing demand, needing more teachers, needing more people. What's the sort of one-on-one feedback from the detainees? Do they sort of find that they're sharing the positivity around, and are people sort of on a wait list, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, they love it. In Division 6, at one point in time, we had a wait list of up to 50 names. And of course, we can only hold, you know, max of 30 in our classes, and it's dependent on how many teachers teach with us. We always co-teach in the jail, or at least we try to, you know, not just for safety, but also so that it's, you know, enjoyable with the class to have a co-teacher, and for one person to teach one half of the sequence and one person to teach the other half. And the students love that too, because they get to experience different types of teaching styles, different types of sequences. When we did our photography project a couple months back, we took pictures of the students filling out cards that says what they've learned through yoga. And it was just overwhelmingly emotional and positive emotions in terms of what they've learned. We had a student come up to us, one of my favorite stories, and he said, you know, okay, I originally came to class for the ladies. You know, I heard that there were some ladies teaching yoga, and I wanted to come see the girls. And he said, but what I've gotten out of yoga is so much more. And like the way that he expressed his gratitude, and he was like, I started reading this book, The Power of Now. It's incredible. I'm reading this book, I'm doing yoga, I'm meditating on my own. He was like, I feel it in my body. And he was so excited. And like, you could just tell that it was no longer about the ladies. It was about the yoga and the breath and how he feels. And that is essentially why we do what we do.
That's beautiful. Power of Now is a personal favorite of my girlfriend. She had it out again the other day before she was journaling. So yeah, another fan of that book. And you said a word there, expressibility, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, thinking of, you know, without generalizing, you often find that people that end up in incarceration, they tend to lack some literacy skills, but are very intelligent and creative. And oftentimes you find that it's all about knocking away that layer and just seeing this massive amount of expressibility. And I'm sure that just must bellow out after getting in touch with themselves. It must just be really powerful, like I said, to see some feedback at the end of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you see that. And I think it's so important for us to constantly remind ourselves to not have those original, general like thoughts and generalizations. And I'm so guilty of it too. We had, and he was very, very quiet, but always came to class, was a consistent student, was super thankful, such a gentleman. I mean, really just an awesome human being. And when we brought those cards to class and we said, hey, you want to fill this out on what have you learned from yoga? And this was maybe 30-year-old white male, a little stocky, completely covered head to toe in tattoos. If you look at him, you obviously might not think he looks like the friendliest person. Yet when you talk to him and you get to know him, he was the most gentle, one of the nicest, just respectful men that I've ever met. And I looked at his card that he filled out, and I don't remember right now what he said, but I remember looking at it and being like, wow, your handwriting is so nice. It's nicer than mine. Everything was spelled, grammatically correct. And it reminded me of that thought of that generalization of people that come to jail, aren't as educated, as others. And it just kind of reminded me to, remove those generalizations and, look at them, humanize them, look at them like me, and help, find that common ground. And it was a great experience because, that day I learned something. And, he was able to communicate what he learned as well.
Wonderful. Now, I'd encourage people to head over to your Instagram, and the highlight there that's up first is a little feature that you guys have had on CBS. Tell us about that process and what that's going towards.
Yeah, absolutely. So the past 6 months, the biggest goal we had as an organization was to bring in a media team to showcase, the work that we do in the jail, and to hope, fingers crossed, that a news channel would pick it up. And we were able to get an incredible all volunteer media team, photographer, videographer, video editor, to come in to take pictures and video of what we do. And through that, I met some amazing individuals, one who connected me with CBS, and to help just share our story and our mission, and to help us bring more classes like this to more institutions. And so with that, we're, looking for donations to help us get there, help us, buy clean yoga mats, new yoga blocks, and having this experience and being able to be on CBS and NBC and a few of the other yoga journals I'm talking to has been just an amazing experience, that people want to hear our story and they want to help us extend our program. And that the more people that we talk to, each individual person I talk to, like meeting Katie and talking to you, has really shown me that, there's so many great people out there that are excited to also help those that are incarcerated, because, it could be anyone. It could be someone's mom, someone's dad, someone's brother. And if they could just have, the tools, such as yoga, they can learn how to, control their anger, control their anxiety, control their frustrations, and, take those learnings elsewhere.
No, that's really, really good. And so how long ago was that, and what have you had, come back at you so far?
What's that?
How long has that been since that was up, and what's sort of come back out of that?
Oh, yeah. So CBS just launched on yesterday morning, actually.
Right.
And NBC launched last Wednesday. And the response has been incredible. We've seen donations come in. We've had so many people reach out and, want to learn more. And I'm just excited to continue to see, where we can continue to grow.
Wonderful. Correct me if I'm wrong, the sheriff was in that little feature, was that right?
Yeah, the sheriff was able to speak about what we do as well.
Yeah, what's it like having someone so high up in the county just really give such an amazing endorsement, and he seemed to really understand, the chalk and cheese of people without and people with such a wicked tool.
Yeah, he's, really incredible. Definitely, we're Cook County is very lucky to have such an incredible sheriff that cares so deeply about the community and cares so deeply about Chicago. He's just a nice, very down to earth person who he was excited to share our mission. And for us, that's just an incredible opportunity that I never, a year ago today, I never ever would have thought, was possible. And I think to know that he cares so much and that he appreciates and sees the benefit of what we do, it's beyond meaningful for us.
And so what do you think is the deal with the likes of Chicago? Again, going back chalk and cheese, got this massive investment sort of industrial complex, and then you just hear about shootings every other, multiple day and stuff. Like, is it people like your sheriff that are just trying their hardest to make a difference, or is there a lot of, it's happening again going on?
Yeah, I definitely think that, from an outsider, someone who doesn't live in Chicago always sounds a lot worse than it is.
Yeah.
For me, like, I live right in the heart of the city, and I've never heard a shooting by my house. Granted, I, don't live in the bad areas of Chicago. So it's, I always say there's bad areas everywhere. I'm sure that there's bad areas in Australia or,
in New Zealand,
outside of New Zealand. There's bad, I apologize, New Zealand.
No, that's all right.
But there's, you always have to look at the bright side and, look at what Chicago has to offer and what, other places have to offer. And I think that, knowing that there's so many other positive things going around, that there are ways to balance, the negativity and what happens. But yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah. So do you think that for you guys, the key focus and the key drive, like for the likes of the sheriff, is, like you said, to just really reduce recidivism? Is it recidivism or recidivism? And, like you said, these people are in there quite possibly for something minor that never happens again, and you put them on a greater path, and they don't end up in actual prison and serving time in an environment which is escalated again. Is that what you really find is pushing things like your movement forward?
Yeah, I think, what pushes us forward is really just a reminder that we can help a population that has lesser resources, and knowing that there will be positive movement and there will be growth, but it'll be very slow and over a long period of time, is, why organizations like us, and why it's so important for us to be involved. I think it's so important to remind ourselves that, every single day we're suffering of first world problems, and that there are communities out there that have so much less. And then if we can only provide them, one yoga class a week, then that's better. And it's providing them with more tools and learnings that if they didn't have any yoga or any other education in mental awareness or mental health awareness, that it helps bring other organizations to those lesser populations.
Great. And so on the flip side, how many times have you been told this is crazy, it'll never work? Because you're probably on the right track when you're hearing that.
Yeah. I think, when I first started telling people, when I first decided to even teach in a jail, it was always a response of like, you're doing what? Why would you do that? Why would you put yourself in that situation? Aren't you scared? You're, a smaller woman in a room full of men, and isn't that scary? And I just am looking at it like, no, because I'm volunteering my time. I'm doing something that's good for an organization. And when you meet these people, they're not scary. And I think in one of the first articles I wrote on LinkedIn, I said that, the most experience that I had with the jail before PYC was watching Orange is the New Black.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's why people, which is an incredible show, but it just portrays what a jail is in such a different light. And the media these days and TV shows and movies where they're focused on, crime dramas and jails. Like, they make jails obviously look like these terrible, scary, horrible places. And granted, of course, they're always in the reminder that, yes, it is a jail and it's not a carnival, and it is, it could be a scary place. When you go in there and when you meet the people and you talk to them, I would say, 99.99999% of them, are genuine people, or they could be genuine people if they just had the tools to, grow. And so I'm not worried about it. People, say I'm crazy, and I'm like, we put ourselves in life-threatening situations every day. People who text and drive are putting themselves in much more of a life-threatening situation than me teaching in the jail once a week.
Yeah. And so where do you think your passion for yoga, and then where does the passion for helping people, where do those two come from and intersect?
So it's interesting because I've never been the type of person that, gets, infatuated with working out or, yoga in general. I wouldn't call myself a yogi per se. I think it's, I've always been the type of person that I love volunteering. I love donating my time. In college, back, even through high school, I was always volunteering, going on volunteer trips, joining volunteer organizations. I was a part of Alpha Phi Omega volunteer fraternity, and just donating my time wherever I could. And for me, when I found yoga and just knowing what yoga did for me in terms of, reeling in my anxiety and giving me back my mental health, and just giving me back, my own, freedom to care about, me and what I'm going through, being able to kind of partner that with the ability to help others is why I love Prison Yoga Chicago so much.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And yeah, where does the marketing life fit in, or is that something that is sort of a compartment of who you are as a person, Sasha?
Yeah. So for me, like, I'm a very creative mind, I guess you can say. I love working on projects. I love building things. And I love thinking about, like, psychology in school. And I knew that I would never be a psychologist because I think that's like one of the hardest jobs in the world. And, I can barely take care of my own emotions. How am I going to take care of, so many other people's? And I think what I love about psychology is the ability to really understand, why people do what they do. And I think marketing is just a creative psychology. I think it's really understanding why people buy what they buy, why some brands are more successful than others, and, pairing that creativity with the psychology, with the data that backs behind it. And I love that. I'm infatuated by, being in the creative world, and I guess just trying to, continuously learn with who I am and why I do what I do.
Yeah. And so how long have you been doing that for now? Did you say 4 years or so?
Let's see. Yeah, just about. I started in business development and then moved into marketing for maybe the past 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah. And so even in that short period of time, how's that landscape sort of changed with the likes of social media now taking over a lot of the marketing landscape?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a huge part of marketing and how, brands communicate with their consumers. I know with Prison Yoga Chicago, when we market on social media and when we, talk about our mission and who we are, it's been our biggest source of, connecting ourselves with people who are attending our trainings, people who are donating, having people who I don't even know message us and want to know more. And I think social media is such an incredible way to really just learn more about your community and how what you're doing, whether it's selling something as a brand or offering a service as an organization, how you can really humanize a brand to be relatable within a community to be successable.
No, that's fantastic. And with the various tools out there, it's a great way to measure or track or tap into your reach and where you're going and why you might be resonating with different people.
Yeah.
On that note, where do people find you guys?
Yeah, so you can find us on the web at www.prisonyogachicago.org. And if anyone is feeling so inclined to donate, our Venmo is at prison-yoga-chicago. And of course, on social media, we're at Prison Yoga Chicago on Instagram and on Facebook.
Wicked. And they can reach through that there to communicate with people?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Always accepting emails and people who are interested in learning more. Our email is info@prisonyogachicago.org.
Wicked. And so, as I said to you before we got started, we always get people to leave us with something that's guiding, or either a quote or something, or something they've learned, or an ask, whether rhetorical or a way that they can reach back through those channels and answer to you. What would you like to leave us with? This has been hugely illuminating to me. I'm hugely fascinated in what you're doing, and I'd like to thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'll leave you with my favorite quote. My favorite quote is, "Everything will be okay in the end. And if it's not okay, it's not the end."
Wow. That goes on really well with what we had in the last episode.
Yeah. It's definitely how I live my life.
Wicked. Well, it's the evening there. It's middle of the day for me there. But you have a great evening and catch up with, is it your friend's daughter that we've heard in the background?
Yeah, her baby girl.
Oh, fantastic. Enjoy the evening, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Your life is full of everything, and yeah, thanks so much. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Cheers. Bye.